What my 96-year-old grandpa taught me about real wealth. Money Not Math episode 179. Welcome back to Money Not Math. Today's episode is going to be different than usual. It's going to be more personal and honestly a little emotional for me. But I believe it might also be one of the most valuable episodes that I've ever recorded because it reminds us what retirement, aging, and legacy are really about. On March 20th, 2026, my 96-year-old grandpa passed away. He was one of the men I looked up to most in this world. In many ways, he reminded me of John Wooden, not because he was famous, but because of the way he lived his life. He never drank, never smoked, and I can't remember a single time I ever heard him swear. He lived with a quiet integrity that you don't see very often these days. He also had a deep faith and an unwavering commitment to his church community. And in his final days at the nursing home, that commitment came full circle. People from his church stopped by, called, prayed, and sent cards to support him. They showed up for him because he had spent years showing up for them. And as I've been processing his passing these last few days, it hit me that my grandpa's life is one of the clearest pictures I've ever seen of what I talk about constantly on the show. The most important parts of retirement have far more to do with meaning, relationships, and legacy than with math or market returns. So today, I want to share a few of the lessons my grandpa taught me about real wealth, the kind that never shows up on a statement, but always shows up in your life. Lesson number one, the way you treat people is a form of wealth. When I think about my grandpa, the first thing that stands out is how he treated people. He wasn't loud, he wasn't showy, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just consistently treated people with kindness, respect, and humility. And at 96 years old, that kindness came back to him. In his final days, he was surrounded by love, not because of what he had financially, but because of who he had been for decades. This is the kind of wealth that compounds in ways money never could. When people think about retirement, they often ask, do I have enough saved? My grandpa reminds me that we should also be asking, am I investing enough in people? Because at the end of your life, nobody asks what your account balance was. They remember how you made them feel. Lesson number two, consistency, character, and faith are priceless assets. Another thing my grandpa taught me is the value of consistency. He lived his values every single day through his faith, his lifestyle, his relationships, and the way he showed up in his community. The most powerful example of this came during some of the hardest years of his life. When my grandma was in the nursing home battling Alzheimer's, she often did not recognize who he was. There were times she did not know who any of us were. But as far as I know, my grandpa visited her every single day that he possibly could. He sat with her, he held her hand, he talked to her, he prayed with her, he showed up. Even though she wouldn't have known the difference, imagine the emotional weight of that. Walking into a room to visit your wife, the person you built a life with, and she doesn't even know who you are. Yet he kept showing up, day after day, year after year, simply because it was the right thing to do. That's not financial wealth. That's character wealth. That's loved, lived out in action. That's faith expressed through consistency. And that kind of wealth is more meaningful than anything money could ever buy. Lesson number three, community is one of the most underrated parts of retirement. We spend a lot of time talking about money when it comes to retirement, and money matters. It's an important tool. But what often gets overlooked is community. My grandpa invested decades into his church and the people around him, and that community supported him in his final season of life. They visited, they called, they prayed, they sent cards, they comforted our family. That kind of support doesn't appear in a retirement plan worksheet, but it absolutely matters in retirement itself. When you picture your own retirement, don't just picture a number, picture the people around you. Picture who you are serving now and who might show up for you later. Community is a form of wealth, and my grandpa had a lot of it. Lesson number four, good planning gives loved ones the freedom to focus on what matters. Over the last couple of days, I've also been reflecting on something personal that I feel incredibly grateful for. I was fortunate enough to spend most of my grandpa's final 24 hours with him. I sat beside him, I talked to him, held his hand, and was simply present. And when he took his final breath, I was holding his hand in mine. It was one of the hardest moments of my life, but it was also one of the greatest honors I've ever had. And that experience reminded me of something important. When those moments come, nothing else matters. Not the market, not the news, not the math. What matters is being there, being present, being able to focus on love, gratitude, and saying goodbye. And that's one of the biggest reasons I believe so strongly in the work we do at Five Stone Financial Group. Good planning is not just about numbers or performance. It is about creating clarity and simplicity so that when life's most difficult seasons arrive, your family is not distracted by logistics, guessing at your wishes, or scrambling to figure out financial details. They can be fully present, just like I was able to be with my grandpa. Good planning gives your loved ones the emotional space to focus on what truly matters, not finances, but family. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping families prepare, not just for retirement, but for life. Lesson number 5. Success in life and retirement is not measured in dollars. When my grandpa passed away at 96, he was not surrounded by fancy things. He was not talking about investments or account balances. He was surrounded physically and emotionally by the love and respect of people whose lives he had touched. That, to me, is success. Not luxury, not status, not wealth in the financial sense, but a life of meaning, character, faith, service, commitment, and community. A life where your presence mattered. A life where people felt valued because of you. A life where your legacy lives on in the people you loved well. My grandpa lived that kind of life, and I'm incredibly grateful to have learned from him. Grandpa, this episode is for you. Thank you for showing me and, and so many others what real wealth looks like. Thank you for your faith, your strength, your humility, your loyalty, and the way you loved grandma even through the hardest days. Thank you for reminding me that the most important investments we make in life are not financial ones. To everyone listening, I hope this encourages you to think about your own legacy, not just what you're saving, but who you're becoming, not just the math, but the meaning, not just your net worth, but the impact of your life. Because at the end of the day, the math matters, but it's not the point. The point is the kind of life and legacy you're building. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of Money Not Math. Disclaimer: this content is not legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult a qualified professional regarding your personal situation. Thank you. Bye.